So I'm trying to pick a time that's going to work for everybody. Adam. Yeah, we'll send out a notice. Yeah, I'll send a notice.
6:30?
6:30 or 7, whatever you guys want. Okay? Good evening, board members and residents. I would like to call to order the regular board meeting for Monday, March 9, 2015. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Battanti.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Capral.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. York.
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkest.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of February 23rd, 2015, approval of the bills in the amount of $799,470.77, approval to execute the engagement letter from Stewart, Bouvet, and Whipple to perform the audit services for the year ended December 31st, 2014, in the amount of $36,300 pursuant to our contract, and approval of the Knights of Columbus annual Tootsie Roll Drive, March 27th through 29th, 2015. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Brado, with support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, are there any amendments? I did not hear any prior to the meeting. So if there are none, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda as posted.
So moved.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Battanti. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, next is announcements. There are a few announcements. The 2015 Huron-Clinton Metro Park passes are for sale at a discounted price to township residents. These annual passes can be purchased at the Township Administration Building in the Treasurer's Office. The cost is $24 for residents and $20 for seniors. That's a discount from the regular $30 price. St. Hubert Knights of Columbus will be hosting a fish fry and bake sale this Friday, March 13th from 4 to 7 p.m. There's also an announcement, I think a pretty important announcement. There was a press release that the Clinton River Public Advisory Council published, and a summary is that the Clinton River Public Advisory Council, in coordination with the Clinton River Watershed Council and the Office of the Great Lakes, is accepting a $20 million grant in funding over the next 3 years for 11 projects throughout the Clinton River watershed. These 11 projects are along the Clinton River, its tributaries, and the mouth of Lake St. Clair for fish and wildlife habitat restoration as a part of the EPA's Area of Concern program throughout the Great Lakes. The Clinton River watershed has been listed as an area of concern by the EPA for 28 years and has a remedial action plan listing 8 beneficial use impairments that must be removed in order for the Clinton River to become delisted from this as an area of concern. The target for delisting is 2018. There are some upcoming informational seminars regarding Proposal 1. On March 23rd, there will be 2 presentations. one from 1 to 3:15 p.m. at the Shelby Township Hall, and in the evening from 6 to 8:15 p.m., also on March 23rd, at the Clinton Macomb Library, their main branch on Romeo Plank. The information will be presented by a Michigan State University Extension Policy Analyst, as well as representatives from SEMCOG. If you're interested in more information, you can contact MSU Extension 586-469-6440. The flyer for this informational seminar is also available on the township's website. And for information on these events, you can always call the supervisor's office, 466-1445, or visit the township website, harrison-township.org. Are there any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Item B1, a resolution to renew a permit to perform utility work in the road right-of-way. Board members, the Macomb County Department of Roads has requested that we renew our permit to perform utility work in the road right-of-way. They've asked us to adopt a resolution in order to renew the permit. The resolution was included in the board packet. It's generally a pretty harmless resolution saying that we desire to perform work in the road right-of-way. We have named specific individuals from the department that could pull permits, and will maintain all requirements, do restoration work. Basically, a repeat of the agreement that we've had for several years.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution for a blanket permit for utility maintenance in the road right-of-way for the Macomb County Department of Roads. Do we need to read this?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it was published. I mean, if anyone wishes to have it
that's
read
fine.
publicly, but,
My motion stands.
all right. Is there support?
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. Capral, to adopt the resolution for a blanket permit for utility maintenance in the road right-of-way for the Macomb County Department of Roads. Any discussion on the motion or resolution? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkust?
Yes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item B2, to adopt a resolution of support for the DNR's application for a grant from their trust fund for acquisition of land to expand the Clinton River cutoff site. Board members, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources is applying for a grant to acquire land adjacent to the current Clinton River cutoff site. This grant would be used to purchase land, and it would not require any match or participation from the township. The DNR has asked for a resolution of support from the Township Board, and again, attached is a resolution merely indicating our support for the DNR to use their own grant monies to acquire land for the cutoff site.
Can I just ask, what is the cutoff site by definition?
The Clinton River cutoff site is probably more commonly known as the Spillway Boat Launch. That would be the site across from Ballard, basically Ballard and Jefferson, that site there.
So we want to expand that? Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, we don't want to. The DNR has expressed an interest in expanding that site primarily by relocating their launch. Because I did meet with the DNR about this, and I brought the agenda item forward. The current site that they have is a sufficient site as it pertains to launching boats. The problem that they have is during inclement weather, or when a storm blows up on the lake, you may have, I don't know the number, but let's just say you have 50 or 60 boats that have launched from that site, all who might in a short period of time want to come in. There is no harbor of refuge, and it is their interest to attain the marina in that area so that they would have a harbor of refuge, so that the launch wouldn't be open just directly to the lake, but kind of have a sheltered area, so that during times when people are landing or launching, they're not instantly dumped out in the lake. If the wind's coming a certain way, it's not very sheltered. They've indicated that they would relocate the launch from its current location, slightly, I guess, to the south, toward the spillway a little bit further to that marina. They also, one of the advantages, or one of the reasons why we believe this could be beneficial, there has been discussion about about managing vehicle access to the township park that is right on the corner of the spillway in Lake St. Clair. And right now what we have is we have a crossing that is right in front of the mouth of the bridge, or the foot of the bridge going over the spillway on Jefferson. So it doesn't really allow for vehicle traffic. You don't want vehicles coming out of there. It even makes pedestrian traffic difficult. The thought would be that from their current site, if they were to secure the private land that's nestled between the two, there could be a service drive that runs along there. They also indicated that potentially that site could accommodate a public fishing site on the lake, and just basically an enhancement of the area. Right now, on busy summer mornings, they're not only filling their parking lot, but the old Admiral Marine site, they're parking in the grass. So the demand at that site's pretty great, and they would like to improve that site. So that was the indication of their plan for the acquisition. Of course, anything they plan to do there requires, some level of oversight and approval by the township. But, they're popping the tab, basically.
If I remember, and Larry knows more than I do, but that DNR site was quite a brouhaha when they were putting it in. I think Larry was the chairman of the planning commission at the time. And, that item was brought up about a safe harbor several times, I remember. That was one of the big issues. But I don't know. I guess I'm just uncomfortable voting on this without seeing exactly what's going to happen. I don't know that my vote, sometimes when we vote on these items, that's a soft yes to their plans.
Well,
right?
yeah.
We don't know what the plans are, right? But by approving this grant, we might be granting some type of soft acknowledgement of some bigger plan that we're unaware of.
But
right
any
now.
plan still needs to come in front of planning or
I
texting,
understand.
so,
That's fine.
I mean, this is just basically allowing them to, start land acquisition and things like that.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me as if they got this, they'd have to come back in a year and do a similar grant application to the trust fund to do the improvements, and, I think this
Right.
is solely acquisition at this point.
Right.
I mean,
State
I'm
of
against
Michigan, too.
expanding that myself, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I don't sit on planning, that's their deal, but I remember
But they're-
all the people here.
Are they expanding on the land? I mean, where it's gonna affect us, or are they expanding more in the water? I mean,
Well, the goal as they presented it is to acquire the marina, which would give them a launch point that it would have a safe harbor.
Okay.
They discussed the potential for daytime transient docks, possibly finger docks that were there. But I think the important point that was made that I would like to reiterate is, if they're successful in acquiring the land, there's I guess for lack of a better word, just as significant as an investment to actually improve that land in a manner that's in harmony. In other words, just merely buying that isn't going to solve their problem. They clearly have a need to, if they intend to proceed with that, to adjust the way the parking flows, the way the staging is done, boat launches and so forth, to better accommodate the new property. So I think this is just the beginning of a multi-step process. And I also do agree, in one form or another, they have to come up with the funds to actually make the improvements to the property. So this is just one step in that process.
So would it be reasonable, because I tend to agree, acquiring the land is one thing, but the plans to improve the property, would it be reasonable to say at this point, if we were to approve this, to advise the DNR that for their next step, we would the board is asked to be have a little bit more detail behind what the plans are.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request, but I don't think there's any other option. In other words, I don't know that acquisition of land, for example, the DNR currently owns a site just about the same size as their current developed site. They own the land adjacent to it, which is currently vacant.
Right.
The fact that they own the land doesn't give them the right to just merely proceed without some oversight and bringing plans to the township. So if they say, well, we'd like to buy some land in and of itself, that doesn't give them any inherent right to develop it without going through, the processes in our ordinances.
So I guess then, what I'm understanding from that is that the next step, which is likely some build out, we would see the plans before being asked to support it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, if I may, it says in the resolution specifically, whereas the Harrison Township, or the Board of Trustees supports the Michigan Department of Natural Resources submission of an application titled, quote, EV and MR LLC property acquisition to the Michigan National Resources Trust Fund for the acquisition of said property. So I'm assuming that if we had that document, the EV and MR LLC property acquisition document in front of us, that would answer all these questions, because what we're saying with this vote is, yes, we've seen it, we agree with that document, and we're giving a resolution to that effect.
It's an application is what it is. It's an application for property acquisition.
But what if in that application it says that they're gonna do A, B, C, D, E, F? And if you vote yes, I'm just saying, if you vote yes, you're saying that you saw that and you agree with that document.
Oftentimes, when you're going around, and just because we did this, the exact same grant application process for the bike path last year, oftentimes you're getting these as you're writing it, because, you're trying to put together pieces of the puzzle. And I think
I've been around long enough, I guess I don't wanna get caught with my pants down.
Well, and anything like that
You know.
would be conceptual as well. I mean, that doesn't mean that that's what they're going to build, because again, it all has to be, it all has to follow proper protocol for land development.
Right.
I would be more concerned if it was a private development, a private marina, but it's the state of Michigan. So it's not like they're not gonna follow their own laws. I mean, it's,
Further discussion, board? Was there a motion?
I'd make a motion to adopt the resolution of support for the Michigan DNR's application for a grant from the MDNR Trust Fund for the acquisition of land to expand the Clinton River Cutoff Site.
Was there support?
support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Caprell. This board's had a fair amount of discussion. Unless there's any more, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
William Bardell, 18-year resident. I just want to know, I don't got anything against the DNR, but what I'd like to know is, and we're agreeing to something like this, and then you go down Jefferson, we want open access to the lake and a visual view that Mr. Mark Hackle wants so you can see the lake. Are we going to put up another tin can to block the view of the lake? We want to all look at the lake, circle the lake. Are we going to put up another tin can? Another big boat repair shop, another big piece of steel up there and sheathing. We don't know what these guys are going to do. I'm not against the DNR, but I mean, there's no I don't see a PowerPoint plan up on the projector in 2015. I'd like to know what they want to do. I mean, aren't we supposed to see it visible? We want to look at the water, or are we going to look at another big tin can and not see the water again and go around in a circle? I just was wondering. So I don't see the plan on the projector, the overhead, and I'd just like to know. I don't know how you can vote on this. I don't see what are they going to have. Are they going to, have a turtle hatchery or whatever? And I'm just not seeing the architectural situation. Or again, are we going to have these tin can marinas that look like garbage all along Jefferson? Thank you.
Jim Senstock, 31698 San Juan. Excuse me. When this property came, when the DNR property originally came before Harrison Township, at that time, the DNR went out and purchased the property under covers, hidden from the public. And then they announced they were gonna put a boat ramp there. And when the township board, while it was kind of divided, said they didn't want it, the DNR basically said, we're gonna do it whether you like it or not. Since then, what we've been seeing is, while there was probably not quite as much controversy about that site, there's still controversy. Try driving around that neighborhood right now when there's a tournament in town and there's 50, 100 cars with boats on the back of them, when they're parked up onto the berms and everything inside that ramp there. You're worried about looking at the lake. You get to see every car and the trailers that are attached to them. You can't even see the lake from Jefferson. Additionally, if they're going to, they currently have the property directly adjacent to the south of that. They own some portion of it. At the time, they told everybody, that's not part of our plan. We're not going to let anything go on there. No, you guys are wrong. We're only going to park the amount of cars that are available in the parking spaces there. Well, we saw how that lie came through, and it was a lie. Now they're talking about, oh, we want to buy farther over. We want to buy the old marina that's farther south. That's what I understand you're saying they're looking to do. Though they didn't really tell you that because they won't show you the plan or won't even show you the application. Or if they did, then the question becomes, why didn't they show you the application? Or why is somebody withholding it? What's going to happen there is that there's going to be a whole lot of additional parking. And there's going to be a significant number more of boats. The traffic on Jefferson at this time can't support what's there. I don't care where they put that light, next to where it is right now or farther down north or whatever they want to do, there's a significant traffic problem. Now they're coming to you and they're not giving you the information and they're asking you to support something that the township has supported in the past, not supported it. And they forced it down our throat. Why would you consider voting for that? Because I can tell you what their response is going to be once they bring that plan in there. Well, you approved that. You guys agreed to it. You knew what was going on, or you should have. Well, what I do know what is going on. The fact is they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes for a second time. And they're going to affect a whole neighborhood down there even more adversely than the first program they put in there. And additionally, they're going to affect your DDA. Or maybe is this part of the DDA? Oh, geez, I don't know. But they're going to have it, it's going to affect your DDA also. And I say, based on my experience around, as I was supervisor at that time, based on my experience, they affected us adversely. Not quite as adversely as we thought, but now they're going to finish the job. And they're asking for you to basically agree to it, sight unseen, help us out, and I'm listening up here and I can't believe my ears. There was a significant portion of the township that was very, very upset at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. One of the questions a resident asked was regarding public access to the lake. The very nature and mission of the DNR is to provide public access. It is the very intent of that site. Both residents and non-residents alike access Lake St. Clair by that site. The DNR has 3 launch facilities in Harrison Township. None of them have any indoor storage. A slight exception to that might be that there's a small boathouse at the end of South River Road for the Sheriff's Department. But with that exception, I can't think of any structure or any function where they limit visibility of the lake or limit access to the lake. I think that's ultimately their goal. There were some questions about saying, why can't we see the plan? Well, to the best of my knowledge, there is no plan. There is no document. I haven't seen a document, a plan showing what their intent is. The DNR indicated that they would like to expand that site. They indicated that they would like to apply for a grant, and they have an application for that grant. I didn't review the application. I met with the DNR along with some folks from the county's Planning and Economic Development Department, and they said what we would like to do is relocate that launch site from its current location to a point of refuge so that both people launching as well as those that might be coming back and landing would have a safer place to access the lake. But ultimately, any plan that they might develop is going to require that not only the township reviews it, the county reviews it. You know, we're talking about the state of Michigan, so if they're going to make an investment in that area, maybe it comes with increased, you know, work that's done on Jefferson to handle additional traffic, or the expansion of, you know, intelligence signals, that sort of a thing. I can't begin to guess all of those details, but I know that there's several steps that they have to satisfy before they could proceed with a plan. And I do, as a resident, remember all of the hype that was associated with that. I certainly would agree with the resident that the amount of concern that was generated didn't really come to fruition. There was a lot of discussion on how this was going to be very disruptive. I think there are business owners in that area that have a different perception of the impact of that boat launch on their business, and I think in some ways it's a positive impact and not a negative one. But ultimately, that remains to be seen. At this point, they're merely asking for a grant in this round of funding for the Michigan DNR Trust Fund grant monies to apply for a grant that would not require any investment or match on our part to acquire more land.
Okay, so at the very end, it says, now therefore be it resolved on the basis of the above that the Charter Township of Harrison Board of Trustees support submission of Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund application titled, quote, EV&MR LLC property acquisition, end quote, by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Now, once again, I don't have that in my packet, but I'm being asked to approve that submission, and I don't know if that's a one-page document or if it's a 1,000-page document. I honestly, I mean, I might agree with everything that's in there, but I don't. You know, I'll liken this to the pension, to the pension fund a few years ago, when on the fireman pension, when somebody would retire and they'd bring me one sheet from the X-ray, and it'll say, fighter Jones, this is his average final comp, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd ask the question, well, where's the backup? Where did all this information come from? Well, after several years of arguing and changing that board, we finally got people on there that said, yes, we want the backup. Well, the backup on that was 100 pages. But by agreeing to that just one document, I was agreeing to all of that submission that I didn't know what was in there. And that's all I'm saying. Just be careful what we're voting on here, because there might be something in there that this board might not like. We might all like what's in there. We might not. I don't know. But clearly by voting for this tonight, you are agreeing. You support the submission of this EV&MR property acquisition. I'll just leave it at that. I'd like to see the document, I guess. I'd feel more comfortable if I saw the document. Let's see that way. You know, and I'm not blaming you, I'm just.
No, understood. Yep. When I received the request for the resolution, I did not receive that document. I have not reviewed that document. I met with the DNR. They expressed to me what their concern was and what their goal was. I hadn't heard from any board member prior to this evening saying that they would like to see that document. I would have been happy to contact the DNR and ask them for a copy of that grant application. I suspect that the grant application may not be complete at this point, because I know that the submission date is April 1st, and human nature being what it is, they're probably still in the process of assembling that grant application. I would be happy to ask them for a copy and bring it back before the board. We'll be meeting again before April 1st, and if we wish to rescind this resolution, we can. But the DNR asked me to approve a resolution of support, and with the understanding that we ultimately have that final review or say when an actual plan is in place. And I don't believe that plan is complete now. I don't believe we have something we can put up on PowerPoint or on a projector to see what their plans are, because I don't believe they've developed that plan yet. What they do intend to do is improve the site by having a point of refuge for the people who access the lake there. That's what they explained to me. I was in a meeting with lots of other folks from Chesterfield Township and New Baltimore when we were reviewing all the projects along the lake's edge. And based on their request, I brought this request for a resolution to the board.
So, Mr. Supervisor, if I understand what you just said, was that there's the potential for, we can vote on it this evening, and you can bring a copy of the document before the, if it's available, before the next meeting. And if the board so chooses, could rescind their, not approval.
Resolution of support.
Their support.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Sounds good, thank you.
It would
Are
be
they
nice if
under
you could
any-
ask them.
Are they under any sort of time constraint? Are they trying to
April
do this-
1st
April
is the
1st
deadline.
The deadline
No, I
for
mean,
trust
it's like,
fund.
are they trying to build this out this year?
No, I think so let's talk about just, again, the trust fund in general. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund is a fund of money that is fed through mineral rights on public land. So there isn't a whole lot of public land in the Metro Detroit area. So as a result, there aren't really a whole lot of dollars generated, but you can imagine that in some of the northern areas of our state, there could be tens of thousands of acres of state-owned land, and that land generates mineral rights. It's the intent of prior legislation that established the fund to use those mineral rights to purchase more land for public use. Typically, every year, there's some level of outcry locally that while millions of dollars are spent in other counties, very little money is spent in Macomb County from that trust fund. Of course, the argument there is that there isn't really necessarily large tracts of land in Macomb County that the DNR would purchase to enhance, say, hunting access, for example. Whereas on the opposite side, they might be looking to spend that money for larger areas of land in other less developed parts of our state. So, from time to time, people in Macomb County will say, well, here goes another round of funding, and we didn't receive very much of anything. So, I believe that, in part, the DNR is looking at saying, all right, we've heard from some of the southeastern Michigan residents. Here's an area where we could acquire land and expand public access to what I think a lot would believe is a pretty valuable resource in Lake St. Clair. So that's how the fund process goes. It was a year ago when we were sitting here talking about asking for a similar grant to construct trails in the 155-acre parcel. And while we submitted that grant, and we have every right to resubmit each year, at this point, they chose not to fund that. This is the DNR's attempt to apply to that same group to see if they can acquire land. And that's, at this point, that's all it is. They may or may not be successful. If they are, then they're likely to contribute some funding toward drafting a plan on how they might better expand that. And, it has to involve the township. It has to involve public input. It has to go through our procedures, just like any other parcel.
And silly as it sounds, the DNR turned the DNR down for money last year, so it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, right, the group that, the group that approves the trust fund grant applications is not the same people or same group that's applying for it. So the DNR does apply for grants competitively, and they don't automatically get them. But if they do get it, there's no match on our part, and there's no need to invest further dollars to match any improvements that might occur on that property. We beat this one up pretty good. Is there further board comment? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Caprell to adopt the resolution of support for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources application for a grant from the MDNR Trust Fund for the acquisition of land to expand the Clinton River cutoff site. Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Caprell?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
No,
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda is item C1 from the Treasurer's Office.
yes, board members, I run the cable, and since Darren left, which is, that was our old cable guy that ran the PC and, taped the PC and ZBA meetings, several years ago, probably, gosh, 4 or 5 years ago now. I and, Jared, my old deputy, and now pretty much myself, have been taping the PC and ZBA meetings for about the last 4 years. I've asked, over the last year, anybody here, have anybody, I don't care if it's your kids, I don't really care. I just need to get some cable operators to cover the PC and ZBA meeting. And I don't mind doing it on an occasional basis, but somehow through the years, it just became that I became the cable operator. So before I posted on cable once again, well, probably 45 days ago now, I asked everybody, I think I even asked at PC and ZBA meetings if anybody knew anybody that would be interested in a couple hours every month to just tape those meetings. Nobody came forward. I put it on cable, and I had one applicant, Jim Sunstock, came and said he'd be more than happy to operate the cameras back there and tape the meetings for us. And like I said, if there's more applicants, I don't have a problem with the pool of 3 or 4. I don't care. The problem is that there have been some people interested in the past, but we're looking at 2 to 4 hours a month. And it's hard to get somebody to just come in for a couple hours 2 times a month to tape a meeting. Most of the schools, because I talked to them, they want something, a little bit more than just, a couple hours. So that's the request. The cost is, $10 an hour. And to get people here, several years ago, I did a 2-hour minimum just to get people to come in and tape. I mean, it's not worth $10 to just come in for an hour. You get nobody at that point. But I have been doing them for free for, if you saw Jared or me back there, we don't get paid for it. We have a budget for it. So, like I said, more than happy to have a couple other people. I don't mind having someone for PC, somebody for ZBA. Doesn't really matter, as long as I don't have to do it. But like I said, if somebody's not available, I don't mind coming in and doing it. Actually, it's sort of nice to hear what's going on in the township anyways, but there are some nights where, quite honestly, I have another event with one of my children, and it'd be nice to be at that event, or actually have that opportunity to go to that event.
Mr. York, can you, just a question for you, is there a reason why you can't, deploy your current deputy to help out?
He has in the past, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because before it was Jared or yourself, and,
Now Ryan or me. Ryan was at a couple of
Okay.
the PC meetings. I think,
okay, so okay, thank you.
I think he was at a couple in the fall on Thursday night, I believe in September and October.
Thank you.
So the proposed motion would be, to be extended, would be at a rate of $10 per hour with a 2-hour minimum.
Right, that's what we give Wally or
No, I
any
just might as
other-
well put it in the motion is all I meant.
Yeah,
Make sure that
it's been like that long before I certainly came here, so.
Okay.
Like I said, if there's anybody else, have them come talk to me. I'm fine with that.
Well, I was at the Performing Arts Center last week, and I know I dropped the name off from an individual who works part-time at the Performing Arts Center doing that, and I dropped that off with Ryan on Wednesday last week, and I don't know if he reached out to them. And what she is a student at Lance Cruise in their Pankow program, and she said she'd love to do it, love to put it on a resume. She's probably somebody that's looking for, maybe Specs Howard or something down the road. So I don't know if you guys gave her a call, but she said she had a couple classmates who lived in Harrison Township who had never heard of it. They're probably not our target market on the cable TV.
Yeah, they're probably not watching the meeting.
Yeah. So I know I gave Ryan the information there. It might make sense to follow up with them.
did this student demonstrate any experience or?
Yeah,
list any-
she ran the room at the Performing Arts Center.
At Center Campus?
Yeah, at the Armstrong Performing Arts
Oh,
Center.
up there, okay.
Yeah.
I can teach anybody how to run our equipment. Our equipment isn't that technical, to be honest with you. And I could probably teach any of the board members in 10 minutes at the most how to run it. It's not that, But the problem with hiring a high school student, and this was before my time, but I believe that they can't work past 10 o'clock. So if one of those meetings were to go past 10 o'clock, that becomes a problem with having that person here, because I believe their work permit during the week says you can't work past 10 p.m.
Wow, I don't think so. My daughter regularly scheduled past 11.
They could be changing it. I just remember in the past, my predecessor, they had that discussion about using people from the school, which they did at one time, but some of those PC and ZBA meetings went past 10 o'clock, and the issue came up about their work permit.
Yeah, it's
So-
hours per week, but there are no stated hours relative to how late they can work.
And if you have a pool of candidates to choose from, potentially you could look at the meeting schedule.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But back then, keep in mind, the PC had, and that's when the township was in their growth. They were doing 2 meetings a month, same as ZBA. The meetings were quite long, and I think that they had, I think the PC, I don't know if they still have, but I remember they had a 10 o'clock hard cap on their, at some point they went to a 10 o'clock hard cap on their meetings, so. But
Could we amend this motion to include other people? So you have a pool of people to draw from, rather than just one person?
and like I said, I'm fine with 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't
I mean-
really care.
It'd be easier for you if you had a pool you could draw from
I-
than just one person. That,
Hey, one is better
Amenable?
than none.
yeah.
One is better than me.
Yeah, and I'd rather reach to people who have experience. I know you say it's easy, but at least somebody that has an email account and can sign in, but these people that, that I was talking to, she did the lights, she did the mics, she did everything, and has run the cameras and that kind of stuff, so.
I know my predecessor, they tried to go to the school and get kids from the school, and it didn't work out. I know that. That was before my time. I think Bill Servio
Yeah.
was involved in that right before I came. And I'm not to say that this person isn't,
No,
much
yeah.
more responsible. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. But I know at one time they wanted to get kids from the school. They went to that, and it was just a disaster because the kids wouldn't show up, or maybe it was could have been just a volunteer thing too, right? I don't know. But I'm more than happy to talk to the young lady. I guess you said it was a young lady, and look into that work permit issue, and I'm more than happy to, like I said, have 2 or 3 people. I don't really care as long as it's not me. So I'll make a motion to hire Jim Sunsteck as a part-time cable operator at $10 an hour standard cable operator rates, and
With a 2-hour minimum, you said?
well, yeah, 2-hour minimum. I've been doing that all along. Do you want me to put? I mean, I'm sure that I'm gonna talk to this young lady, and I don't have her stuff in front of me. I'll talk to her and bring her to the next meeting.
Well,
If she's interested, I don't know.
Why don't we, rather than specifying a person, why don't we just say to hire a person? Yeah.
Well, typically the board will.
Yeah,
will name-
you always gotta bring the name
wanna
back
name it, okay.
anyways.
Yeah.
All right,
So regardless, I would still bring that name back.
Similar items with a new name,
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah, yeah.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Caproll to hire Jim Sunstock as a part-time cable operator at a rate of $10 per hour with a 2-hour minimum. Discussion, board members?
I know I tried to convince the citizen walking up to the podium, since he was already here most of those meetings,
We'll open the floor for public
to sit in
comment.
the
Thank you.
cable room.
Thank you. I think that's a good choice. I think it's gone on long enough. I think Jim Simstock is a fine young man, would be terrific for the job. Thank you.
Just recording the meeting.
He might not know who Jim is if he thinks he's a young man.
You know, just for the record, when you, if you're working the cable room, you tend to temper your opinion.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Are there any further comments, board members?
I guess I have a question. I guess maybe I didn't read it properly. It's, so it is specifically for the ZBA and PC meetings?
Well, just the cable operator. If Wally were to call in sick, I would,
Right.
you know, sometimes, I mean, there has been on occasion where Wally's been sick, and you know, or even special meetings. It would be nice to have some people for a special meeting to come in and tape it. You know, I mean, I've done it in the past where I just let it run, but it's nice to have somebody in there to make sure that the sound is still going, and you know, so just a cable operator, whether that's a special meeting or a PC or ZBA, whatever we need taped. You know, we tape the National Day of Prayer. Well, we do that for free. I do that for free for them. I wouldn't have a cable operator do that, because I wouldn't charge that's a bad example, but I was just a general cable operator, so.
so if I understand this process, we bring in this other young lady, she gets added to the agenda, and we can hire her too. So we have
Correct.
more than one person.
And then what
I'd
I
like
would
to have
do,
more than one person. So
and if I had two, let's just say I had two, right?
you bring them both.
I would say, you know, does somebody want to do PC and one person want to do ZBA?
Right.
And then, you know, if there's other meetings, so whether it's a special meeting, you know, then I would say, you know, ask one person if they can't, and then the next time the special meeting comes up, you ask the other one first,
Right.
right? Just to keep it balanced. I mean, but I really miss Darren. Darren was fantastic.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Caproll to hire Jim Sunstock as a part-time cable operator at a rate of $10 per hour with a 2-hour minimum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda is item D1 from the accounting office, but also the clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yes, board. At our January 26th board meeting, we reviewed a proposal for commercial insurance, in which necessitated us moving to a new insurance company because of some loss history with the old company. The new rate with the company was considerably higher, and part of the discussion that we had here at the board level was to go out and research some alternatives. Mr. Spencer and myself spent some time with a couple different agents, trying to get some different pricing to bring back to the board. Attached before you, you have a comparison that Mr. Spencer put together. He's done it in the past. Sort of tries to line up coverage lines for everyone, puts them in a position to be comparable, or at least as comparable as they can be. We received one quote from Nickel and Saf for a policy through Trident, and that information's there. We also received a price from the IBEX agency, and they're selling a product known as the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Association, or authority. Actually, they're a governmental authority formed between several governments. The policy from Trident is similar to what we went under with Michigan Community Underwriters. The biggest difference would be that it brings us back into line with an occurrence form type of insurance. Very similar limits. There's a couple that are a little bit different. The MMRMA, the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, their policy works a little bit different. They have a $5 million coverage for everything. It's a base level of coverage. There's no over. You don't have to worry about hitting an annual aggregate or anything like that. That's on every occurrence is a $5 million coverage. So that includes zoning issues as well, whereas our previous policy had $1 million coverage in zoning, or a wrongful acts issue. Theirs is a $5 million coverage. Another nice thing about that policy is that the cost of defense isn't built into that $5 million. So if for whatever reason there was a ruling against you in let's say $4 million and you had $1.5 million in attorney's fees, you'd still be covered under this policy, subject to simply your deductible. And again, the lack of an annual aggregate, for whatever reason, there was multiple claims against the board that had those types of settlement figures. They'd be subject to their own cap. That policy is also on a per occurrence basis, or on an occurrence basis, I'm sorry. And the other unique thing with the MMRMA is they offer members of the organization policyholders, but you're actually joining as basically a shareholder of the organization is sort of the way they describe it. They offer a refund of your deductibles on basically a payout every year. What they do is they set aside an amount of money, a pool of money that their actuaries say, here's what's necessary to cover our claims, here's what's necessary to keep business going into the future. Based on that, whatever they have over that amount, they return to their members. And every year it's different, it changes, it's based on how the market performs, what their loss experience is in a year. But they do offer that premium rebating. This year, over the last year, they had a good year in the market for themselves. They received in $48 million in premiums. They paid out $45 million in rebates. So essentially,
No way.
yeah. So essentially, they only retained $3 million of everything they took in for premiums. It's a product that's designed for municipalities. Some of our neighbors have it. St. Clair Shores, down the road, Sterling Heights has it. It's a unique product. The cost is a little bit more. It is less than what we're currently under. We'd be saving about $6,000 a year compared to the policy we're currently under. It would be a little bit more than the quote from the Nickel and Saf. But when Mr. Spencer and I were going through it, we felt that it was a unique product that was worth the board giving their consideration for. We felt that might, in the long run, give us the best option for protecting the township. There's no rebates in the first 2 years. They let members establish themselves before they're allowed to draw from that pool. So it would be a down the road issue. But we thought it was an interesting twist to the insurance.
Do you know, who this group uses for their attorneys if we get sued?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
No,
forgot.
that's fine. It's not the
They
current.
named a firm.
No, it's not the current firm. They work with they have a contract with a different firm. Both of these agents would do their work through a different firm.
I suppose it's worth stating, obviously, any of those relationships are subject to change. In other words,
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
the firm that an insurance company chooses to contract with is independent of, I mean, they could choose to drop one firm and sign up with another. But we did ask the question, neither
Yeah.
of them are with the current firm.
And an interesting thing that they offer, because they've seen it more and more in government, and they just added it, is they offer a $1 million data breach policy.
Yeah, I saw that.
For our computers and our servers at no cost right now. I mean, they literally added it on 2 years ago, and I know on Friday we had a denial of service attack on our mail server. So I mean, it is something that could happen here. So that was an interesting item that got added on there. So, Mr. Spencer, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know it's difficult to try and
I mean,
compare.
quite honestly, I mean, for $6,000 less, what gets us in trouble is this per occurrence and that. I'm more than that, I don't mind raising our, having, looks like we have some additional coverage for roughly the
bit.
same amount, and we're on a per occurrence rather than an aggregate. And, I never thought we would get to our aggregate, but you get runaway juries or whatever, it can happen, obviously. So.
Yeah, and they said for, you can look at some other levels. They don't really move around the numbers. They'll move around the total amount that you have for their plan. They offer a plan for governments. It's sort of a one-size-fits-all package. They don't modify like, oh, we want to drop our business income portion of the insurance or something like that. They don't do that. The only thing you could change within their policy is that overall coverage limit.
I was just curious, where it says, like, damage to premises rented to you, just on page 1, right?
Yep.
The first number, U.S. Specialty 500,000, Trident 100,000, and then Michigan Municipal Risk included. Is that included in the 5 million or? I was just
Yeah.
curious as to what, I mean, we have numbers in all the other columns, and then it just says included. So I was just wondering, is that part of the 5 million or?
Mr. Spencer could probably answer that one a little bit better than I.
It's about the 5th line down, board members, if
Yep.
you're looking. And it says damage to premises rented to you. I don't know that we have any of that, but I just thought
Yeah.
I'd ask the question.
Glenn, do you know what your note me?
I'm not entirely sure. I drove that rather than they did because I had put the sheet together. But the damage to premises rented to you is actually included under the property and buildings.
So it's included under that $5 million
And so it's,
number.
well, it's included under the building limits, so. And the building limits are at replacement cost.
Okay.
I don't know that we've ever rented.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I was
Right.
just using that as an example.
So
of
it would fall
what
under, on the third page there, you have the building limit. We have a number of 15 million in there. And that's, but it's, the building limit is replacement cost, basically.
the sewer backup, just out of curiosity, that's only $100,000 of coverage. We've never had it, but if we have one, those costs can go up pretty quick. And it's not something that we think of because but our current coverage is 100,000 anyways, so.
Yeah, and you know what, it's funny because of, I mean, it's not funny what happened, but because of the storms last year, it was sort of something we talked about with him, and he said, for claims against that to be successful, you know, in their experience in adjudicating a couple of those matters brought against some of their clients was that you have to prove that it was something wrong with the equipment and not an act of God over and above that overwhelmed the things, so.
Yeah, like I said, we've never had an issue here, but, you know, since we're looking at it, it's staring me in the face, so. No, that's fine, great.
Now, it was my understanding that there's a relatively limited number of actual providers for this level of insurance. I mean, this isn't, when we talk about getting competitive quotes, this might not necessarily be the same as, say, individual auto insurance where there might be 20 or 30 companies that you could choose from. Now, I don't know if, Mr. Spencer, if you can speak to that at all, or?
Well, it's also driven by the township. Mr. Saff is sitting over there, had approached a few other companies and they just flat out refused to offer coverage. So he did find somebody that was interested in the township, but it's not a limited pool, but it's limited by other things.
Yeah, and it was odd that neither Mr. Spencer or myself, or I don't think anybody on the board, I mean, the Michigan Municipal Risk Management was a new product that we hadn't heard of, and you know, like, hey, how come nobody's ever knocked on our door and said, like, hey, buy this? He said, well, the guy that had your area doesn't work for us anymore, and you know, there was a reason that you weren't getting called on. But it was because there is such a small pool. The fact that we had never gotten a pricing from them before was odd.
Is that
to
part
me.
of the Michigan Municipal League?
No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
the separate product.
Oh, okay.
I know in many cases, we'll open up the floor at such a time when we have a motion. Mr. Saff is kind enough to join us here. I don't know if we would, if the board would be comfortable with allowing him to, you know, approach the podium and address the board, if you're interested. Yeah, I know you're taking notes, and so I'm thinking you know.
I have one other
Gnawing at the
question
bit.
that may or may not be included as part of his.
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things we talked about when we bought the last insurance policy in haste were the claims made
Yep.
versus occurrence.
Yep.
And I think we have a little bit of an overlap.
A nose or a
Issue.
tail, that's what you're talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
So how do we address that
we're getting pricing right now
to address the gap?
to
between-
purchase either a tail or a nose.
Extended reporting period endorsement.
Yeah, yep.
Yep.
We're
And
not
that's,
gonna
and
get
that,
sued in fracks that happened in the last month, nothing happened.
You can acquire that, if you're ready, may I?
yeah, please,
jump
yeah.
All set.
Yep.
Good evening, Stephen Saff Jr. with Nickel and Saff Insurance, located in downtown Mount Clemens. I'm a property casualty agent and a principal with the agency. To start right into your question, you can obtain that extended reporting period endorsement from the expiring carrier, or you can approach the new carrier and ask them to endorse the policy. So you've got a couple options there. The limitations that you'll sometimes find with the expiring carrier is they may only offer 12 months or 24 months. But if you can build it into the replacement policy, they may simply identify those dates continuously and not have that limitation. So that is a possibility. Claims made is an appropriate form. This is just one of the things you have to address.
Right.
And I think that Mr. Witt and Mr. Spencer are both well aware of that, and as Mr. Witt referred to, he's already looking into that from the existing carrier.
And a part of me wonders, and maybe it isn't this simple, but if the new policy went into a place, you know, February 1, I mean, can we literally just backdate a policy
No,
to February 1?
you're not going to be able to
They won't
backdate a
allow
policy for a community, for a municipality. The complexities of municipalities, carriers won't allow that. They're going to be looking for an effective date
Gotcha.
that is not looking retroactive.
that. Okay, thanks.
Maybe a day or two based upon, you know, an effective date, but as far as going that far back, again, you're going to have to deal with that period once the
Separately.
decision is made by this body forward, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
I know you guys just have had a ton of fun with the insurance topics over the past couple of weeks, months rather. I'll try to make this as brief as possible. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions, and I'll try to address a question right then and there. A couple things I want to point out about this program. The Trident Argonaut program is dedicated to public entity, dedicated to public sector. The underwriters, the claims adjusters, the loss control specialists, those are all individuals that are dedicated to and working on nothing other than public sector. They're not working on shopping malls one day and municipalities the next and apartments the third day. It's public sector all day long. Our agency is dedicated to public sector. We've been in business since 1929, under current management since 1966. We currently represent the city of Mount Clemens, the city of Fraser, Lenox, New Baltimore, Washington, Shelby, Clinton Township, and also Macomb County itself. We currently write the fiduciary liability for the township. We stepped in a couple years ago when the current provider couldn't get their arms around that and helped address that coverage for the fire and general employees.
That's for the pension.
For the
That's
pension,
pension.
yeah,
Yes.
pension, yeah.
As a side note, I'm the chair of the Mount Clemens DDA, so as your DDA plans develop and go forward, I'll be happy to talk to you into the wee hours about TIFA and all the fun things that have been involved with the DDA side of the coin as you move forward with that interesting project. When I was brought in with your difficulties, we took a look, we did an examination, we completed an application. We have looked at the township in the past. We provided quotations in the past. I live in Mount Clemens, we work in Mount Clemens, so we had a knowledge of the community. We discovered right off the bat that the prior agent hadn't picked up the water tank over on Union Lake. After that was discovered, a couple other properties were added to the policy also that had been missed in the past. So I think we've got a local presence here where we're reading the papers, we're talking to people, we know what's going on, and have an ability to respond to changes and exposures as they occur. So we're rather proud of that experience from that perspective. Yeah, there was a comment made about potential refunds, dividends. On the other side of the coin, there's a potential for assessments. If the program does not perform, there's an ability, once you become a participating member, to be assessed if there's a catastrophic claim for someone down the line that the surplus cannot handle. So there's no guarantee of a refund, but there's also the possibility of an assessment. Please keep that in mind. The Trident plan does cover zoning for the full policy limits of $5 million, and those defense costs are also outside. What that means for you is, as we defend and investigate a claim, the limits of liability are not being reduced. So think of it as two separate checkbooks. There's a checkbook to pay the defense attorney, to pay the examiners, to pay the court reporters. All that's occurred and does not attach to the limits afforded under the liability policy itself. In regards to the aggregate issue, we're presenting general liability, public officials liability, employment-related practices liability, and automobile liability. There is no aggregate on automobile liability, so we're going to pay those auto liability claims with no deductible, first dollar, all day long. There are aggregates on the general liability, the public officials, and employment-related practices, but they are towers. I mentioned checkbooks a moment ago. You have a $5 million aggregate for the public officials, a $5 million aggregate for the employment-related practices, and a $7 million aggregate for the general liability. So if we pay a $3 million general liability claim during the course of a 12-month policy year, it is not going to affect or reduce the limits available for the public officials or the employment practices. 12 months, those aggregates restate themselves. So this is not something you're buying into for an extended period of time. So you do have that protection here with those separate policy limits. Again, I always use the analogy of checkbooks. So I'm handing you a checkbook of 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million to draw upon. In the payments out of one, do not reduce or attach the other. Sewer backup coverage, we have full policy limits for the full $5 million. I am intimately familiar with Act 222 and the immunities that are afforded to a community. What's important in a situation like this is that there's a familiarity with what is demanded of a community in response to a sewer event. There are 5 points within the Act that determine if immunity is in place or not, but there's also provisions within the Act that demand that you have certain written notification provided to a community by an affected property owner within a certain period of time. City of Dearborn is one of my clients, and if you go to their website, you'll find where we've assisted the creation of the information that a resident can download as far as a form to fill out that instructs them the steps of what to do. You need to be very careful, again, when you've got an immunity situation to make sure that you're, be very careful when you're dealing with a statutory situation that you're complying with the statute. And again, we've had an immeasurable amount of experience with that. I mentioned aggregates, zoning, defense outside, sewer. Again, I think Mr. Spencer's done a decent job with the proposal summary that's before you. I simply want to reinforce that we are $18,337 less than the expiring carrier. We still are maintaining inverse condemnation coverage, which is separate and distinct from the zoning. And I would be proud to have you as a client. If there's any questions, we do offer this premium in installments. If so required, a 40% deposit and the balance in 3 installments at 20% on the natural quarters. We would require individual applications from the treasurer, the deputy treasurer, the clerk, and the deputy clerk for the position bonds to satisfy the statutory requirements that are imposed upon townships to have those individuals fulfilling those duties to post bonds with the community itself. And this is an annual guaranteed cost program, and it's an admitted carrier. This is not a pool. This is a carrier that its forms and its financials are vetted by the state of Michigan. In case of carrier insolvency, the state of Michigan, much like the FDIC with your bank deposits, the state of Michigan guarantees the payment of claims and refund of unearned premium. And there's no notification requirements. For some reason, if you decide that you want to go in a different direction, you can simply notify us in writing and we'll cancel the policy based upon a demand date. With a pool program, you're locked in for a year and you must give notice 90 days or 60 days in advance if you so desire to make a change. No restriction like that with the coverage as presented.
Steve, I've got a question. I should have asked you earlier in the day, but we talked about this, that we asked you to quote apples to apples against the U.S. Specialty. Then later on, we got this offer from MIRMA with the $5 million per occurrence. Does Trident even offer that at a higher premium? Could we get a policy like that?
The pools are constructed, I think Mr. Witt made reference to the fact that the pools are a unique arrangement. The short answer, Glenn, is no. This is a traditional insurance company, much like you would buy coverage for your business or for your own personal needs. If you think of Travelers or AAA or Hastings Mutual, this is a traditional stock insurance company. The stock format has the aggregate and the occurrence format. Trident, knowing that there's a competitive nature with a no-ag program, has gone back to the table and corrected their program or enhanced their program by giving those separate aggregates. So we're separating those out. The response to your question, I think, Glenn, would be is if you felt that the $5 million towers or $5 million checkbooks per line of coverage may not be sufficient, you buy more coverage. That's the solution that would be offered by the stock companies.
At the occurrence level or at the aggregate level?
Both. When you increase, if you were to come to me and say, we're not comfortable with 5 million, we want to go to 10 million, that would be both in the occurrence and in the aggregate. Again, we were trying to provide apples to apples based upon the expiring. I apologize for not offering increased limits of liability. I will say, though, that the majority of the municipalities that we insure are looking at limits in the range of $5 to $10 million. And being in the industry for over 31 years now, I've never once had a community exceed the limit of liability that we've sold. The largest liability claim that we ever were presented with and paid was a claim for a municipality in Wayne County involved in a police pursuit case, and the jury amount was $1 bazillion. They appealed and it came back down to under $7 million, and this community had $15 million in coverage. Again, Wayne County jury, very different from what we're dealing with here in Macomb.
And you'd mentioned, I know several, because I think in municipal government, we tend to look at, well, what do our neighbors have? And so while we know that some of the neighbors do have this Michigan municipal risk, you mentioned several of them, and I'd inquired at a supervisor's meeting. Several of them, you know, are insured through your firm, and those, you know, you mentioned Clinton, Shelby, Washington Township. At least I remember those were 3. Those are all with the Trident product?
No, they're not.
No? Okay.
Nickel and Staff operates as an independent insurance agency.
Okay.
We represent more than one insurance company. Trident Forest currently insures Washington, Fraser, New Baltimore, Lenox, within Macomb County. When I think Mr. Witt made comments earlier, or Mr. Spencer maybe did, about other insurance companies. As an independent agent, we have the ability to work with or talk to more than one insurance company. So when I was invited to take a look at this, we complete an application and we send it out to these carriers and ask them to take a look. Travelers Insurance Company, I knew right off the bat would not be a fit for Harrison Township because of what we see them approaching or what they're working with on the size of communities. This community does not fit their profile. Another carrier was One Beacon that I submitted, and they were lukewarm, decided they would not quote because, again, you were on the fence as far as the size. Trident deals with communities of the size of Harrison Township. That's their bread and butter. Okay. They also you don't have an element of liability for law enforcement, which would be a separate policy form, and that I think makes you more attractive to them also. The other thing is that when you look at the claims history for the township, really for the past 5 years, your loss ratio was beneath 35%, which is pretty darn good. It was not. Let's see, how do I want to say this? I was surprised from the response of the prior carrier based upon a 5-year loss ratio. Right. The 5-year loss ratio reflects a profitable account and a well-administered account and managed account. If we see a loss ratio over a 5-year period that exceeds 45%, then we begin to get nervous. Over 45% begins to erode into the operating expenses of the carrier and begins to question the profit. And this is why it goes back to the issue about dividends. You get a carrier that charges $100,000 in premium, and once they pay out $45,000, $50,000 in claims, their profitability goes right down the chart. So this is where dividends become a potential, but also assessments become a potential.
So I do have a question since you're here. on the, I guess it's called public officials and wrongful act liability?
Yes.
Right? So that's just the title of the whole thing, which includes like PCZBA,
Right.
all
yeah.
of that, right?
Well, part of the application process was I had to define all of the different boards and commissions.
Right.
Yeah.
So specifically to the zoning,
Mm-hmm.
it says 1 million per occurrence, aggregate annual $1 million. But then down below, it looks like you have an excess liability of $4 million. Is
Correct.
that for all of that, or just zoning, or
The,
what?
it covers the public officials, including the zoning. So what we
Okay.
have is we have a specific policy form that is written for the public officials that encompasses the zoning. Once that policy is provided with $1 million per occurrence, Trident, the same insurance company, it's not going to a different underwriter or a different claims adjuster. They have an umbrella policy that picks up at $1,001 up to $5 million. Again, I mentioned stock insurance companies a moment ago. If you bought, if any of you own a business or any of you bought an umbrella policy for yourself, your insurance agent will say to you, well, you can buy up to $1 million here, but once we get to $1 million, we've got to change over to this other policy form, the umbrella or the excess policy. So what we're doing here is we're giving you that $5 million per occurrence, $5 million in the aggregate, by constructing that umbrella policy excess of the underlying.
Which we've never got anywhere close. I mean,
Right. The important thing to remember is
You
you've
know.
got the $5 million limit and it's the exact same insurance company. So if that catastrophic claim happens and we hand that insurance claims adjuster a file and the claim approaches $1 million, he's not gonna go to somebody else and say it's your turn. It's still the same individual, the same carrier that's gonna administer the file. It's the manner in which they deliver the product.
I'm just asking that just so, because
Yeah.
when you look at that, 5 million in the third column, when really the second and the first column are both offering the 5 million.
Well,
Again, it's
But there is-
the
there is
first
a-
column has a zoning exclusion. That's important.
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
But-
the other
but-
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but,
The
but,
current carrier has a zoning exclusion
Yeah,
on the
I-
aggregate.
okay, right.
We are providing coverage for zoning.
I'm just
Yep,
pointing
up
out
to 5
that,
million ultimately, really.
Correct, yes.
I was just pointing out that it's actually 5 million, not the 1 million.
Right.
Just to clarify that, so.
And again, not to beat the dead horse, but we have that occurrence and aggregate situation, but that aggregate is separated and distinguished between general liability, public officials, employment practices, and there is no aggregate on the auto.
Now, you had mentioned that, say, for example, in one community, perhaps because they might have a law enforcement component, that changes the pool of insurers. It also changes the potential for claims. And you'd also indicated, say, for example, some carriers might look at a community such as, say, Clinton Township and say, well, with the population approaching 100,000, the volume of business, and so on and so forth, they look at that different than us.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably, they also look at that aggregate. In other words, it wouldn't seem logical that a community of 25,000 people and roughly a quarter of the area would have the same aggregate limit as in Harrison Township as Clinton Township, correct?
Aggregate, those limits become more of a consumer choice than a carrier decision.
Right.
A carrier is, you'll find, more than willing to offer the increased aggregate limits.
Understood.
But at a price.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned with your 31 years of experience, you've never had a customer exceed that limit. Presumably, at least in some part, if not in complete part, because you've approached that municipality and said, hey, you know what, your $500,000 limit is really risky.
Yeah.
You should be at 5 million. Whereas another community, 5 million might seem like a low number, correct?
Our lowest limit in the office is a township, one of the smaller townships, lower populated townships in St. Clair County. I think they've got $2 million.
Okay.
And every year I go to them and say, boy, here's a quote for 3, here's a quote for 4. They don't have any employees. They don't have a fire department. They have one building, and they don't have a sewer.
Right.
They don't have
Sounds
one
like-
sewer line.
So it limits a lot of that
Yeah.
potential
So,
liability.
so they're saying, they're looking at me and saying, you know, we're not gonna pay for your bar tab, you know, just leave us alone. You know? I mean, that becomes the
So I guess my point in leading up to that question is if literally based on the amount of risk that a community has, based on, say, for example, you know, we do have a fire department, we do have, you know, a sewer system. Do you look at the coverage that we had, which is what you copied?
Right.
And these limits, do you believe that we're in pursuit of a policy that's right-sized, it's on the low end, or?
I think that you are adequately covered.
Okay.
I would be comfortable with this product and at that limit going forward. My experience are in hierarchy, worst to not so bad. Police departments are horrible from an insurance perspective. The police claims can be very, very difficult, very expensive to pay for. The next become the tie between sewer backup claims and sidewalk claims. Depending upon a community's ability to maintain its sewers, to maintain its sidewalks, if you have a community that's financially stressed and doesn't have the ability to maintain a sidewalk maintenance program, that doesn't have the ability to update and maintain sewer systems, that becomes very expensive from an insurance perspective. Again, I mentioned immunity earlier. We got a problem here. We know about it. We threw some cold patch on it. We can't afford to replace the sidewalk. Your immunity begins to become pierced if you're not correcting these problems. And then the third thing is employment-related practices. Those are the four things, number two being tied with sewer and sidewalk claims. Those are the four things that I see from two perspectives. Severity of claim, when I say severity, I mean the amount of an individual claim, and frequency, the number of types of claims that we see all the time. Autos, fire departments, rec departments, DDAs, you know, I'll take those things all day long. The hazard and the frequency is very, very low. But it's those other four issues that carriers look at when they're pricing and when they're considering an account.
Okay, good. All right, well, that was a great deal of information, very comprehensive, so I appreciate that. I don't
Can I
know,
just- oh, sorry.
I don't know if there were additional, I was gonna say, I don't know if there's additional questions, but if, in the event that there isn't, we might ask you to come back up.
I'll be happy to.
I just have a question, and I don't know, maybe I'm just, what exactly is inverse condemnation?
Inverse condemnation is taking. You've taken
Okay,
the value.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I just think of it
Yeah.
as a condemnation, not an inverse.
We've got a separate dedicated limit for that. Again, that is separate from the defense expenses. So as we defend a claim, as we pay the attorneys, as we do the investigation, we're not gonna pay out of that sublimit of coverage for that. We can offer a higher limit of coverage if we can demonstrate to the insurance company that your principal land use officer is a certified zoning administrator. If your principal land use officer has that designation, we can increase that limit of liability. If you can demonstrate that the members of your PC and ZB boards have, at least half of them have completed this Michigan Citizen Planner program, we can also offer increased limits there. Nickel and Saf has a tuition reimbursement program. Your principal land use officer, I think the cost for the Michigan State program now is about $1,300. I'll pay for half of that. For your volunteers that are on the ZBA board and the planning boards, I think the cost now is about $150, $175. I'll pay for half of that. And they can now do the Michigan Citizen Planner online. It no longer requires any classroom. So what I'm saying to you is if we can demonstrate that your community has taken some proactive steps and has this training and has this understanding in place, we'll give you greater limits of liability. But again, the limits afforded are not eroded or not touched by defense expenses.
And that's 5 million, correct?
That's the 100,000.
100,000, 300,000.
Oh,
That's a
okay.
supplement.
Okay.
I can go up to $1 million on that if we can demonstrate those things I mentioned a moment ago.
That's on the taking.
Taking. Zoning, $5 million. Taking, $100,000 optional million if you give us those
Because
limits.
we're having a big discussion with the insurance company on zoning versus taking, on what kind of claim it was. That's why I guess,
Well,
now that you're mentioning that,
You know, it all, and I'm sure Mr. Huth can speak to this, you've got to look at the allegations and look at the way that they've been written and the way,
well, two people disagree.
Yeah.
We say, you know, our attorney says it's one thing.
Yeah.
The old insurance carrier is saying something else, which, that's what insurance carriers do. They want to, insurance carriers by rule want to push you to the lower limit, especially if there's a judgment, so they
insurance
don't have to
company-
pay.
Insurance companies don't like to pay claims, yeah.
Correct.
I hate to tell you all that, but yeah, they're not sending out claim checks like they're sending out Christmas cards. You know, and that's where we come into play. We hope to think that we can come into play and have some impact or influence upon that. You know, I spend a third of my day reading policy forms. You've always got to go back to these things to understand what is being said or what is being sold, and to be able to assist or to answer a question when these things come up. And that becomes a large part of my after the sale service is, you know, okay, we've got a situation here, what do we do with this?
Mr. Verkest?
Yeah.
I don't usually say anything if, do I have a? but
No,
would
please.
you mind if I
Yeah,
comment?
no.
I've, just want to say that I've had numerous years of relationship with the staff firm, and Steve will always call back that day, and I do send him policy language, have him take a look at it. And I know you have some big decisions in front of you, but in terms of this service this man and the firm provides, absolute A+, always has been.
Yep. No, I think that's valuable coming from you, and I would say that when I brought this subject up at our most recent supervisors meeting, I would say your comments were echoed by several of the supervisors who were present. So,
Several years ago, not this board, but back in 2005 or 6, I think we almost went with you.
You
I
had
think-
me biting my nails.
I think it ended up being the
Dodged a bullet there.
well, no, it ended up being the tail on the
Right.
elected officials.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly,
It
at
was-
the time, Trident at that time didn't offer on occurrence basis.
They were strictly
they were
claims
strictly
made.
claims
It might have
made.
been Travelers, I think we were in front of you back at that time. They were still doing smaller communities, but that was the issue.
But I mean, there's a similar. I mean, for Trident in the past, they were also under. I mean, they sort of changed the way they offered policies to move to an occurrence for, you know.
Travelers
this
sells
type-
this product nationwide to communities from New York to Washington State. And Michigan is a very competitive market. And we were fortunate enough to have an individual that was assigned to Michigan that got it and helped us with some of these issues, like the separation of the defense expenses from the payment of damages, like the occurrence format. They'll still do claims made, and I'm a proponent of claims made. If you think of an automobile accident, when you hit somebody